So today I want to talk about fear and first days while traveling. Um, I know that for a lot of us, just even the thought of like, oh my gosh, when I land in a foreign country, what am I going to do? Is my technology going to work? Do I know how to use the mass transit system? Can I get a taxi? All those questions. I was just on a tour yesterday in the Alfama district in Portugal, in Lisbon, and I met Callie from Australia, from Melbourne, and we ended up afterwards having a glass of wine on the most beautiful overlook of the city. And we were chatting about it because we were both traveling solo and talking about that fear of arriving in a new country and not really knowing what to expect and having all your bags and all of this stuff. And also, both of us being from countries where mass transit is not really um, a thing in the way that it is in Europe. I know if you live in New York City, that is a little bit different, but me being from the Midwest, and she was also saying in Australia that we're just so used to cars and having the control and knowing how to get places. And so the metro sometimes can just feel like a very foreign thing, and super scary. And I said, oh my gosh, I feel the same. I have traveled a lot over the years. I've been to more than 50 countries, but it never, like it invariably, I always find it interesting that the first day I arrive somewhere, I have fear inside. Like I always have this sense of fear of, um, and sometimes it can be so strong that, like this trip, I arrived really late at night. I spent the night in a hotel that was close to the airport just for convenience sake. And waking up in the morning, I was still pretty tired. Um, and just I noticed immediately all these questions started coming into my mind because I had thought, oh, I should go downtown, go see the water, all of this. But all of a sudden, I started having this cascade of questions, that were like, well, what if your phone doesn't work? What if you call an Uber and then your data is not working and you can't get back? Do you actually have any cash? Now you need to go to an ATM. What if you get lost? What if Google Maps doesn't work? Technology, all these questions, that just started rolling in my head. And honestly, I was tempted to say, I have an RX bar. I am just going to sit in my room today and not do anything. um, and so, what I decided to do was I just kind of laid back on my bed, put my hand on my chest, and I just asked myself, like, what do you actually need and want to do today? Because I also think we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves on that first day to go, go, go. And honestly, my very first tip for you would be to not plan a whole lot the first day that you're anywhere, to allow it to be a time for you to just settle, to ground yourself, to not have lots of expectations because it can be exhausting. And it actually, in the end, I find you end up doing and seeing more if you give yourself a little bit of room that first day, or if you have the space to do it, even a couple of days. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't feel like you're wasting your time because I actually think you're not. I actually think you are preparing the ground for you to have an incredible time. So, what I did when I asked myself those questions, the answer that came to me was I need some food and I need to go to an ATM. So, I looked on, while I had Wi Fi, looked on my Google Maps, realized there's some restaurants within walking distance. There should be some ATMs. I asked someone at the hotel. He said, yes, there are ATMs. And so I started walking. Now, for anyone like me, and I'm going to do an episode on this, direction challenged people. My mom always laughs. She's like, I don't know how you travel the world because you are not good with it's very true. I kind of panic if my Google Maps doesn't work, and I'm not sure. Like I traveled pre having a cell phone with maps, so it's funny. I think, how did I actually do that? But anyway, I decided that I thought I could figure out how to get there. It wasn't super complicated, but I started walking toward the way that I thought I should go, and suddenly, and I'm looking at my maps to make sure that I'm turning the right way, and it just goes blank. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I started to panic because I thought, I'm going to get lost. I'm going to get lost. And I was a little bit sleep deprived. For those of you who are not direction challenged, you might think this sounds ridiculous, but those of you who are, you know what I mean. So, so I stopped for a second and I just reminded myself, Dawn, you have done hard things before. You can do hard things again. You can do this. And so I made my way there. I paid attention to some of the landmarks, and something that I noticed that was really interesting is that as I took those steps past my fear, as I kept moving forward, my fear kind of turned into curiosity, where I started noticing people, out just having coffees together. And I was, kind of paying attention to that, thinking it's in the middle of the day and they're just enjoying themselves. I passed a church that I think was built in the 1600s, and I wandered around it a little bit because I thought, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. So, um, so that's something that I think is interesting that can happen when you step into that fear. You can get yourself to a point of curiosity. So I kept going, noticing things. It kind of got me out of that sense of fear. I had to try, I had to go to 4 ATMs before I found one that worked. And in the midst of it, I had this most delightful experience of these two older women who were in front of me in the ATM. And one of them put their card in and she got some money out, and then they added it up. They were counting it together and realized this is not enough. And so she put her card back in, and they were speaking Portuguese. I don't speak Portuguese, but what I imagined the conversation was happening was, because she didn't get enough out again, so she didn't have enough. So the other woman decided to put her card in, and then she pulled it out, and they added it all up, and they shook their head, and so okay, we've got the money we need. I thought it was so cute the way that they worked together to figure out how to get the money that they needed. So I got my money from the ATM. I found a restaurant. I got into the restaurant. The menu was all in Portuguese. There was no English translation. I suddenly realized I didn't download Google Translate, which is a tip for you to do that before you go to a country. You can download the language that people speak where you're at, so that you don't have to have data to be able to translate things. But I hadn't done it. So I panicked again a little bit and thought, oh my gosh, I am in a restaurant and I cannot read this. Even though I know a lot of Spanish, I still couldn't decipher the food. Luckily, there was this wonderful waiter who came up, and he knew that I was trying to guess what things were. And he said, can I help you? And I said, yes. And I asked him for a suggestion. And I got this wonderful meal of some fried cod with this rice with homemade spinach, with local spinach in it. It was a wonderful meal. And he gave me some tips about Portugal, taught me how to order my coffee. So I learned a lot from just talking with him and having that experience. So a little bit of my takeaway from first days and fears is, first of all, like, you're never not going to be afraid. It's unusual, right? I get afraid every time I travel. So expect to have fear, and don't think it's unusual or there's something wrong with you. Or that you're not a good traveler because you're afraid. Because I was laughing at myself thinking, Dawn, how many countries have you been to? And you're still terrified to figure out how to get around somewhere. And my new friend from Australia that I met yesterday, she said the same thing. She said, it doesn't matter how much I travel. It's like every time I arrive in a country, you just don't know exactly how things are going to go. And I'm nervous. So I think that's good to hear, that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be nervous. But the key here is that don't let the fact that you're afraid of that arriving, of what happens, don't let that keep you from going, Because if you do, you're never going to go anywhere. You're never going to travel. But just normalize it and know that we all get afraid, and that we all get nervous about different things. But the other thing is to also understand that people are generally nice. So, and want to be helpful. So usually when you arrive and you have questions, like I was having trouble with the ATM, and my menu, and people helped me when I asked. Now, of course, there are always some outlier stories, but generally, I do find that to be true. So step into your fear. And what I actually think is interesting, it also happened to me, like I said, on this even walk around the community, is that once you step into that fear and start walking into it, then you can get to the point of curiosity where you start to look around you and see, oh my gosh, all these things that are new and amazing and different. And honestly, curiosity is where the magic lies in travel. When you are able to get to the point of just being curious, it opens an entire world, and it can be really a magical world. I think that curiosity is the secret to transformational travel. So, I am Dawn Pick Benson. I'm a self discovery travel coach who works with women in the middle of life transitions to plan a trip that suits what their heart desires. And I am coming to you from Lisbon, Portugal on a 3-month solo trip. And I will be back again with my next tip. I'm sharing information along the way. Whatever I'm inspired to share, I will share. Thanks for listening.